Hey guys, Mark Meckel here. Excited to be with you for the Sunday Night BattleCry. You know, I don't always get to make it. I've been traveling literally all over the world. I spent a week in Argentina in Buenos Aires. I spent a couple of days in and around the greater Chicago metro area, Springfield, St. Charles. Really incredible experiences, incredible trips. I'll tell you all about it some other time. But right now, I want to talk about what our call to action is because I'm super excited about the call to action this week. Today is a special day, December 15th. You're probably thinking 15th. What's 15th? I know Christmas is coming up on the 25th. I know we got New Year's coming up, but what is December 15th? Most people don't remember it. I think we should remember it. December 15th is Bill of Rights Day. Those first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, absolutely incredible stuff. Bill of Rights was ratified a couple of years after. We're going to do some details on that for you guys later on. It was ratified a couple of years after it was proposed, but the Bill of Rights became all at once, 10 amendments became part of that United States Constitution that we love and admire. And my call to action to you right now, today, after you finish the battle cry, is pull it out and read the 10 amendments. Read that Bill of Rights. Those Bill of Rights belong to you. They're yours. They were passed for you. They're intended to protect your rights. I think the government doesn't always pay attention to them. We should pay attention to them. We should know them. We should inscribe them on our hearts so that we can then go out and do the right things to protect them. So happy Bill of Rights Day. We're going to close out today with a special speech that was originally written for JFK. It's been edited for us here in a more common, more current era. And I'm going to read that to you at the end of the battle cry today. I'm excited about that. But let's get right into the news. There's a lot of stuff is going on. It's very exciting. Good stuff, interesting stuff. Some not so great stuff, but the really good stuff is that the Trump administration is shaping up, and it's shaping up quickly, as fast as I've ever seen an administration shape up. I think it's shaping up nicely. Personally, I like most of the appointments, and I think it's going to be fun. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's going to be fun. Why do I think it's going to be fun? Because I think this is going to be a no-holds-barred romp through the administration, romp through the agencies, romp through the education system. And I think there's going to be a lot of damage done to a 100-year-old progressive project. I don't think we're going to completely wipe it out in one term, but I think there is going to be some good and positive damage done to the administrative state, and I think that's a very good thing. When you look at the appointments that have been made, I want to run through some of these appointments because I think they're fantastic appointments. I'm going to start at the top of my personal list, which is our friend, your friend of Convention of States, Pete Hegseth. Soon to be Secretary of Defense. I know there have been some bumps along the way. Look, I know Pete. I've known Pete for a solid 10 years. When I say know him, it's not that I've just crossed paths with him. Pete and I know each other personally. I consider him a friend. You should consider him a friend of Convention of States. He's been with us almost since the beginning, and he's always stood with us, and he's fought for us. And he's a true blue guy. Pete Hegseth is an actual warrior. Pete Hegseth has been in combat. He is a war fighter. He will stand for the men and women in the armed forces. He is a no-nonsense guy. He's going to get rid of all the woke craziness, the DEI in our armed forces. He's going to rearm these guys, retrain these guys, get rid of all the garbage, and make sure we're prepared to do what our military is intended to do, which is to be a projection of lethal force of the United States of America. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be courageous. We're supposed to be honorable. We are supposed to be second to none. And Pete's going to go out and make sure that's true at the individual level, all the way up to the institutional level in the armed forces. And they took some hits at Pete. They tried to take him out, and there have been some fake news around Pete. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, a little bit more further on in the program, but he's top of my list. Second would be, and not necessarily in this order, Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Ag. Brooke has been another longtime supporter of Convention of States. Really excited to have her in the administration. She was acting director of the Domestic Policy Council under the Trump first White House. Now she's going to be heading up the Department of Agriculture. She grew up on a farm. She knows what she's doing. I trust Brooke as much as anybody to run an administration, run an agency, and to know how to bring it in line with the wishes and desires and what's best for the American people. So Brooke Rollins as Secretary of Ag, that's a great one. Department of Education, Linda McMahon, incredible businesswoman, was in the previous administration at the SBA, Small Business Administration. Successful businesswoman. She knows how to run a business. I'm hoping that her mandate is to do away with the Department of Education. Trump has said he wants to do that. Vivek and Elon have said they want to do that. So maybe Linda will oversee that. I think that's going to be excellent and extraordinary. You've got Scott Bessent at Treasury. I think that's going to be a big one. Look, he has a realistic view of the economic situation of the United States and the world. You should read his stuff, anything he puts out. If you haven't done that, you're going to read. There's going to have to be some kind of reckoning. We've been printing all this money. We've got all this inflation. The real estate markets are out of control and not getting better. Something's going to have to happen. And I think Bessent's the man for the job. I think that's another really good appointment. Kash Patel, that might be my favorite appointment because I think he is going to take a wrecking ball to the FBI. He's going to go inside the FBI. He's going to root out the corruption. They're going to try to stop him with everything they've got. Christopher Wray right now, I've heard is elevating people and making appointments into senior positions. I don't think Kash Patel is afraid of any of that. I don't think he's afraid of anything. And I think he's going to get in there, and I think he's going to clean house, and I think it's going to be good. I think he's going to be backed up by Pam Bondi. Pam is going to be our AG. Everything I've heard, she was a very good AG in Florida. I think she's serious, no nonsense, and knows what she's doing. So I'm happy to have her as AG. I think all of these that require confirmation are going to get confirmed. There's a whole bunch more. We could go through the whole list, but needless to say, I think they're good. I think they're all good. And they're good for Convention of States. You know, it's been really interesting to see Convention of States positioned inside the administration. And Producer G, I'm hoping that you could put up our fourth quarter newsletter at this point. And when you look at this newsletter cover, what you're going to see is an incredible group of people who are now part of the administration. You're going to see, for example, Marco Rubio as our Secretary of State. You're going to see Mike Johnson as the Speaker of the House, obviously. Matt Gaetz was on the cover of this. Obviously, he's now dropped out. But you've got Pete Hegseth on here. You've got J.D. Vance on here. You've got the spokesperson for Trump, his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. We've got Vivek Ramaswamy and Doge. We've got Mike Huckabee, and there are others. We went to press with this, and it keeps changing, but more and more people who are going into the administration at a high level are COS endorsers. That's an incredibly big thing for the administration, but obviously for us. And I'm hoping sometime as we go into 2025 that President Trump steps up and endorses personally what we're doing. I think that's going to happen. I think the momentum is incredible going into 2025. You should be really excited. Left-wing violence is on the rise, and left-wing and violence are synonymous. It's not true of right-wing. Left-wing and violence are synonymous. And this last week, we had the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, gunned down in cold blood on the street in New York City. What I think is so extraordinary about this, other than the fact it happened, which was extraordinary, was that it was done by a very highly educated Ivy League kid who had just all the advantages in life and decided to become an executioner. And we don't really know why. We know he didn't like health insurance companies. We don't think he had anything in particular against this particular guy, but unbelievable. This guy was a father, CEO. Everything I've read about him, he was an incredibly nice guy, cared about his employees, cared about keeping premiums low. But this young, Ivy League educated, Penn State educated guy decided to gun him down in the prime of his life. It's hideous. The most hideous thing is that there are folks on the left, prominent folks on the left, coming out in support of this, or at least excusing this, or talking about how sexy the gunman was, or what great abs he had. This is unbelievably disgusting, vile stuff, and very dangerous. But this is the left wing. Anything that they don't like, they can justify violence against it. And that's what they're doing now. This is a dangerous trend in America. This is why the left wing in America is so dangerous. Generally, their ideology always takes them from saying, we're just protecting people to we got to kill the people who oppose us. So pay attention to this trend. It's dangerous, and we need to be careful of this in our country. By the way, if you're watching the economy, inflation is back up right now. I don't know if you've been paying attention to that. You should be. Why is it back up? Well, because over the last year, Joe Biden and his administration have pumped over $650 billion in freshly minted cash into the economy. And when that happens, there's going to be inflation. I mean, this is the thing that annoys me so much about the idea of inflation and the way the left looks at it. They have all kinds of reasons for inflation. Oh, the grocery stores are being greedy. The insurance companies are being greedy. The home builders are being greedy. The gas stations are being greedy. The reality is, inflation is a monetary situation. It has to do with the monetary supply. It is a monetary policy decision to create inflation, and that's what the government has done. They keep pumping money into the economy. The inflation will go up when you do that. They did it to make the economy seem better during an election year. The economy is not better. The economy is sick with inflation, and eventually something is going to have to be done to fix that. It's not complex. More money, more inflation. That means every dollar in your pocket is worth less. That's the government's fault. I was just down in Argentina, as I discussed. Milei has done something to fix that. He's cut out, I think, now 3/4 of government agencies. He has now balanced the budget. They're not running a deficit. It's not easy to do this. This fix is not going to be simple, and it's not going to be painless, but it's going to have to be done if we're going to protect this country for our kids. I think the good news is that we actually do have a counter revolution starting. And I think the counter revolution has already started or is starting right now. Chris Rufo says the left's exhausted, BLM shattered, trans is imploding. Trump has a mandate to abolish DEI, to fund left-wing radicalism, and restore public authority over public institutions. The counter revolution starts now. Let's rock and roll. I think we need to do all of those things. I'm super excited because I agree with Rufo. I think all of that stuff is actually going on right now. You can look around, you can read the news, you can see it's happening. I just saw Southwest Airlines is now getting rid of all their DEI stuff. A lot of other companies have agreed to do that. Look, they knew this stuff was garbage and BS. When they started doing it, they did it because they thought that's what people wanted and they could make money off of it. They're just as happy to dump it, and they are dumping it right now in droves. And I think we're going to see more and more of this, not just in business, but I think we're going to see it in the universities as well. So I'm really excited about that stuff going on. I want to go back to Pete Hegseth. He is a warrior on the warpath. I don't know if you saw what they tried to do to him earlier in the week. They tried to write a hit piece against him. He had said repeatedly that he had been accepted to West Point, and a quote-unquote journalist tried to write a hit piece. They went to West Point. West Point said he hadn't been accepted. And you know what Pete did? He did what he always does. He stood up to this. He stood up to the media. He presented his letter of acceptance to West Point, proving it. West Point had to apologize. The journalist hasn't apologized, though. A journalist should be drummed out of journalism. But then again, this journalist isn't even a journalist anyway. They're just somebody writing hit pieces. So really great to see Pete stand up, blow away the media like this. We're going to need a lot more of this. Go confirm Pete Hegseth. Let's talk a little bit about Syria, because Syria has collapsed. I don't know if you've been following the situation in the Middle East. It is a complicated situation. It's messy. The Assad regime had been there for two generations. Bashar al-Assad was the president. He's a former ophthalmologist. His dad was the president before that. Both of them, I say president, but they're not elected. They're dictators. And he is gone. He's apparently now in Russia, and apparently he's going to be I read this. I don't know if it's true. It sounded like satire, setting up an ophthalmology practice. After being a brutal dictator for a couple of decades there in Syria, he's now been chased out by the rebels. And some people on the left are celebrating, saying, Yahoo! Syria is now free. Syria is not free. The rebels are offshoots of ISIS and other terrorist organizations. They are likely to become an Islamic fundamentalist state. It is not going to be a free state. It is a disaster. It is being divided up as a country between multiple factions. I've read stories that the CIA and the DOD are supporting separate factions. So we're on both sides, or at least two sides of a multi-sided conflict here. The Turks are moving in from the north. They've taken over 8,800 kilometers of territory, which is absolutely unbelievable. Israel has moved in. When I say moved in, I don't mean physically moved into the country, but they have been running bombing sorties in the country. What they're doing is wiping out the entire air defense system and the Air Force of Syria. They're not going to let that stuff fall into the hands of radical Islamic rebels. And that also is really interesting. It clears an air path, an air highway for long-range bombers, long-range jets, and cruise missiles to fly from Israel to Iran's nuclear program. This is kind of the final domino that has to fall in the Middle East. I think it's going to fall. I think it's important that it falls. Iran's nuclear program has to be destroyed. With the air defenses down in Syria, they have the most sophisticated air defenses in all of the Middle East outside of Israel, and that is going to have to be, has been wiped out, and they are doing a good job. They're doing what they got to do. I think this campaign by Israel since October 7th is going to be looked at as one of the greatest, most strategic military campaigns ever in human history. I'm glad to see it happening, but that's what's happening. It's going to be messy. It's going to be complicated in Syria. And I think that's going to go on for a while. And it's going to ultimately lead to the downfall of maybe the Iranian regime. They're going to wipe out their nuclear program. Who knows what happens next? Iran, believe it or not, is the place most likely to become a stable democracy, maybe a democracy, at least not an Islamic fundamentalist state. They have long-term roots in democracy there in Iran. They go way back. If you look at pictures of Iran from the 70s, it looks more like the United States. So I think the theocracy is not long for this world. And I think that would be a really good thing. I don't know what you guys think. I'd be happy to hear what you guys think about what's going on in Syria. All right, don't forget, as we go to Q&A, that we have an open letter to Trump. We need as many of you writing to Trump as possible. That's found at conventionofstates.com/Trump. I'm not sending that unless we get 1 million signatures. We're not going to waste his time. I'm not going to waste your time. So you need to circulate that on social media, circulate it by email to all of your friends, get your family to sign it, conventionofstates.com/Trump, asking him to endorse Convention of States. Also, don't forget, as we go into the year end, this is our most important time of year for raising money for the organizations. So you can text COS Give to 888-444-8774. I'm going to give that to you again. Text to 888-444-8774 and text COS Give to 888-444-8774. And we need that. It's the end of the year. We need that momentum going into 2025. All right, let's go to our Q&A. Janice Ashlock says, can we require all federal and state representatives to take a course on the American Constitution? I don't see any reason why not. I mean, I think it would be great to have the orientation for members of Congress or member of state legislatures require a multi-hour course on the United States Constitution. I think we should do that. I like that idea. Good idea, Janice. Barrett Young asked, would COS think about doing a voting guide for future elections? I think, Barrett, there are so many great voting guides out there that I use iVoter myself. I think there are other ones out there all over the country. I recommend we try not to do things that other people already do a good job on. And I think other people, conservative groups, already do great voting guides out there for you that you can participate in. As we get into election season, we talk about some of those. So we will do that again as we get into the next election season. All right, what we're going to do now is I'm going to read to you, which I don't normally read to you, but I am going to read to you here, an adaptation of a brief address that was recorded by John F. Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy, in November of 1963 to commemorate the Bill of Rights Day. And I think this is important. John F. Kennedy gave this speech. Some business guys put it together, paid for it to be on television or paid for it to be in movie theaters all over the country. It was widely listened to and really seen by the American public. And I think this is important. I don't think this is something we do enough anymore. And again, I said Matthew May, who's a talented staff writer of ours, adapted this so that it was current and so that it ties to Article 5. And so I'm going to give it a read for you. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed seeing this put together. And I'll close with that, and we'll leave it off at the end of that speech. Fellow citizens, I'm grateful for the opportunity to remind you of a most important day in our republic. December 15th marks the 233rd anniversary today of our ratification of our bill, the first 10 amendments to our Constitution. When the Constitution was written, many believed that despite being an extraordinary document, it didn't provide the necessary safeguards of individual liberties required for a free and independent country. Among those who believed this strongly was George Mason, our patron saint of the Convention of States movement. In large part, he refused to sign the Constitution because it didn't contain guarantees like those found in the Virginia Declaration of Rights that he had written and which would later become the model for the Bill of Rights. Many states demanded such guarantees be added to the Constitution as a condition of ratification. Therefore, under the leadership of James Madison, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution were proposed and ratified. They weren't called this back then, but in hindsight, we call these the Bill of Rights. They're the most comprehensive and significant guarantees of individual liberty ever possessed by any people, anywhere, at any time. Because of the Bill of Rights, we're guaranteed, among other things, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, the right to peaceably assemble, the right to bear arms, the right to due process of law and public trials, and the right to be secure in our home and our possessions. I think we often take these guarantees for granted. In recent years, the federal government that is required to uphold them has increasingly distorted or violated them. The history of how the Bill of Rights came to be demonstrates that the Constitution at times needs to be strengthened and reinforced by amendment. Mason and the founders gave us, as sovereign citizens of this republic, the right and the responsibility to act. Just as the states played a significant role in making the Bill of Rights part of the Constitution, the states, through Article 5, have the power to make the federal government meet its responsibilities in preserving these civil liberties. Thomas Jefferson said that the Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government on earth, general or particular, and what no just government should refuse or rest on inference. Although the parchment of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is delicate, both have meaning in the lives of every citizen. We must remind our children of what a great country we have, how it's endured through war and hardship. We must remind our men and women in the armed forces that they do not merely defend a piece of geography, but also a way of life. A way of life that's expressed in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Please join me in commemorating December 15th as Bill of Rights Day. It's appropriate that we be reminded of our blessings, those who made them possible, and those who continue to work to protect them.